Welcome to Teaching Artist Podcast, a show dedicated to discussions of teaching art to kids, making art, and how those things overlap and feed each other. I'm Rebecca Potts, your host, a visual arts teaching artist. Today I'm talking with Stephanie Barenz. I went to grad school with Stephanie, but had lost touch a bit, so it was amazing to hear about her travels, how her career has shifted, and how her artwork is evolving. Stephanie teaches early childhood art at an international school in Shanghai. She shifted from teaching at the university level a few years ago, so we dig into how that change impacted her art making and her teaching. Stephanie also shares great advice for moving forward with your art career during this time while giving yourself grace. As an art teacher/artist based in China, Stephanie has some insight on our current COVID-19 situation. Her school began social distancing and online teaching back in January. She shares how that shift affected her and some tips and encouragement for art teachers still in the beginning stages of distance learning. As difficult as it is to teach such a materials-based physical subject like art remotely to students who likely have very few materials, often while also homeschooling your own children, and considering the fact that your students' parents may be doing the same, we should take a moment to thank those who are on the front lines of this crisis, taking risks to care for the ill and make sure we all continue to have our essentials. And another moment to send love to those who are sick, who have lost their incomes and are struggling, and those who have lost loved ones. This is serious. Thank you for doing your part, whatever that may be. Now, before we dive into our conversation, here's a little bit about Stephanie. Shanghai-based artist Stephanie Barenz creates mixed media works inspired by the layered experience of moving between point A and point B. Her work merges photography, printmaking, painting, and collage. Barenz received her MFA from Washington University in St. Louis. Before living in China, she taught at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design and ran her own studio and gallery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She completed residencies at the Art Students League of New York, Chicago Printmakers Collaborative, and the Pfister Hotel in Wisconsin. Selected exhibitions include the Art Canton Contemporary Art Fair in Guangzhou, please forgive me for my pronunciation here, Solonia Art Center in Suzhou, Milwaukee Art Museum, Wisconsin Artist Biennial at the Museum of Wisconsin Art, John Michael Kohler Art Center, and the Walker's Point Center for the Arts in Milwaukee. Barenz has taught internationally and has presented on the topic of collaboration in art education at conferences in Hong Kong and Taipei. Let's get to our conversation. So I am here with Stephanie Barenz, who I actually went to grad school with. Hi, Stephanie. So good to hear your voice again.
Hi, Rebecca. So good to hear your voice, too. I feel like it was just yesterday we were in school together, but it's been a while.
It's been a while.
So, yeah, thanks for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just chatting a little bit about all the different things I want to hear from you, but I love to start with just a little bit of background. And I always ask, how did you become an artist and a teacher, and kind of which came first?
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. So as far as becoming an artist, it's something I always knew I wanted to do. Something like, my parents always tell the cute stories of all the fun art projects I did as a kid and how they just knew. And so it was always a direction that I knew I was going to take, and went to college at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota for my undergraduate degree, and then went to Washington University in St. Louis for my Master's of Fine Arts. and studied in Italy for a while too before that. And pretty much right after grad school, I jumped right into it. I did some residencies. I took on all the part-time jobs so I could have more time to make work. I think I worked waitress, barista, daycare provider. I did everything.
Piecing it all together.
Yeah. And then eventually teaching positions opened up and I was able to teach at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design as an adjunct. And then I also taught at a small college called Wisconsin Lutheran College, and I taught in their foundations department. So I came to teaching probably actually just a few months after I graduated, but I was just an adjunct. So I was only getting 1 or 2 classes. So I wasn't able to do it full time. And I think as I got into it, I just really fell in love with the profession, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity, unfortunately. So I would work at summer camps and summer programs, and I would adjunct between the 2 different colleges. And then, I did that for a while and ended up deciding to go to China to teach English as a second language at a university a couple years in. And that's actually where I met my husband. He was also teaching at a university, and we were in Hangzhou, China, which is about an hour and a half south of Shanghai. And so we met, fell in love, got married pretty much in a year. We just knew. And ended up awesome. Yeah, it was great. It was a great part of it was great to meet over there. I think that's what accelerated our relationship, because you're in all these stressful situations together. So you kind of really see each other, and we spent all this time together. So anyway, we got married, and then we came back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I continued teaching at the same colleges that I was at, and then took on some more full-time residencies. I did one at the Pfister Hotel, which allowed me to have my own studio, and then they gave a monthly stipend for a year. So I did that, which eventually led me to opening up a storefront and a gallery of my own, because of the publicity and the marketing that was behind the Pfister Hotel program allowed me to kind of get out there more into the community. And then that's
amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, it was a great opportunity. That was 2013 and 2014. So I did that for about 5 years, and then we decided to go back to China about 2.5 years ago. And so we moved back to Shanghai, but we both teach at an international school. And so I teach art in early childhood, and I'm teaching next year in elementary. And then my husband teaches science. So we really love being abroad, and I really love teaching art full time. So it's been really great to have that opportunity to do that, because I think it took me about 10 years to get to a full-time teaching job in art. So I just feel really fortunate, and I just really love it. So that's where we're at currently. Yeah.
How was that shift from teaching at the university level down to the little tiny people?
It was huge. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't know how it was going to go initially.
Yeah, it's a huge change.
Yeah, I love kids. I had nannied before in the past. I had been a nanny for a couple different families, but it is a big change, but it was a welcome change. I think one thing that I love about EC, or early childhood, is that it's really process-based.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of art is, obviously, but it's so in your face when you're teaching 3 and 4-year-olds. And you just really begin to see this is about play and exploration. And so their excitement about making completely changed the way I approached my studio. So while it was a huge shift in what I was used to teaching, it just kind of really opened me up to whole new range of possibilities that I wasn't really considering before. Yeah. So it was good. I'm not going to say it was easy. I mean, they have so much energy, but they're so fun. They don't edit themselves. Yeah. And they just, they also think you're a rock star, which really feeds into your ego.
Totally. Yeah.
They're just they love art, and they love their art teacher. And it was just cool to see that much excitement in the classroom. So I was I was really excited once I got into it and got over the initial like fear of, hey, this is so different from what I was doing.
Right.
I began to see like, yes, it was different, but it was bringing so many positive changes to my studio, but also to the way I approached my teaching too. So,
yeah. And how did it change your own work, like the work in your studio?
Yeah, I would say, I was actually looking through some of my older work from before, and it was just very rigid. I'm not saying like my work was like bad or I didn't like it, but I can see where I was forcing things. You know what I mean? I was like, I just felt like I was very concerned with the product and the end product and making sure everything was perfect.
Yeah.
And when I kind of stepped out of that, I just was starting to have so much fun.
Yeah.
And my work got to be much more like fluid. And I was, I would just make tons of things. If I didn't like something, it was like, okay, no big deal. I'm moving on to the next thing.
Right.
And really just trying to like adopt that spirit that my kid, that I saw my students, how they work through creative challenges or problems in their work.
Yeah.
Really, really changed the way I started looking at the problems in my studio practice. So I think it got more abstract. I became just like okay with throwing something on the paper and being like, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Like now step away and let it be and like go on to the next thing. So it's really helped me quite a bit in the studio.
I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like the little playful things I do with my daughter, I have a 4-year-old, so the little things I do with her, it's similar. Like it kind of feeds into letting go and just being like, it's okay if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And I say that to my students. And lately I've been filming a bunch of stuff for my students with my daughter, like by my side. And the other day she started saying the same thing. She was like on video. She's like, it's okay if it's not perfect.
Keep going, Mom.
Yeah.
I still believe in you. Yeah, I know. And I'm sure as a mother, like, you hear yourself saying those things to your daughter. And I heard myself saying those things to my students. And I was like, all right, now, like, you can't just say that and then go in your studio and beat yourself up because the product isn't perfect.
Right.
Yeah. And I think any teacher will say that. They learn so much more from their students than they, than they ever thought. And I know I feel that way about my students too.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite sort of age level to teach? Is it these little ones, or do you feel like eventually you would want to go back to older kids or adults?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that one.
Yeah.
I think each age level, I know this is kind of a general response, but like each age level brings something different. And one thing I did really love about teaching the older students was helping them through kind of that frustrating process of like figuring out who they were in their work and like where it was going. And like really talking through those problems with them. And I love to see like the confidence that they gained when they like kind of figured that out. Yeah. And can move forward in a direction. So I miss that part. Yeah. I do see like glimpses of that with early childhood, especially like maybe if a child is struggling like maybe with like a social or emotional issue, I can see like how art moves them in a direction to help them resolve something. Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I love the playfulness of early childhood, but there is a part of me that misses working through those kind of like bigger problems with foundational level students. But I'm just trying to take each level for what it is and like just be present with where I'm at. And if I do get the opportunity to teach older students again, I know I would be equally excited about that as what I'm doing now. So yeah. Yeah. I feel like it would almost be, maybe it's too much switching back and forth for your brain, but it would almost be nice to have like different days of the week where you've got different age levels. Yeah. I actually, like next year I'm teaching first through fourth grade. And like, that is such a range. So I'm like really interested to see like how that'll play out. Cause I can see like, first grade, they're probably still going to be in that more process based, like exploratory stage. And like, you know, the fourth graders might be like working through different things that we can talk about more. And, you know, I can help them develop and really dig into different projects. I think with like the early childhood, sometimes, you know, they remember, they're so present. So they are like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. So if you try to revisit a project like the next day, they might be like, no, like I'm on to like something completely else now, you know, which again, I so love, but like, I'm like, no, let's go back to that. I really want to dig deeper. So like, I can see like next year being able to do that maybe more with like the fourth graders than the older students.
Yeah, that is nice with elementary.
It's all good.
Yeah. That it's a pretty big, like I teach now TK through fifth. So that's like the 4-year-olds up to fifth grade. And that is a pretty big range.
So you have a great range. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. And that, I guess that is, really you wonderful. See that like the process oriented versus the really like starting to figure out who they are and wanting to like dig into some of those issues, wanting to express themselves more on like a deeper level. Yeah,
exactly. Especially as you get up to fifth grade. And I mean, that's such a like pivotal time of life. You know, they're working through
a lot.
So much. So yes, definitely. I'll be calling you next year.
Absolutely.
For tips.
I don't know how great I'll be.
I know you.
I've been at this age level for just 3 years, so it's not a ton of time. But I also love that as a teaching artist in the schools, like I'm not certified, so the actual classroom teachers come with me or come with their kids.
Oh, that's great.
So I feel like I've learned a lot from them, just like classroom management and kind of sometimes the teachers will be really involved and help, like especially the younger grades, help break steps down if I'm being too complicated. Now I feel like I've got a handle on that, but especially the first year I was doing it, some of the kindergarten teachers were like, no, that's way too complicated. Like you can't just tell them to paint. You have to show them how to hold the brush.
Yes, I can completely relate to that experience. And I like, you know, I think as an artist too, like you get so excited and you're like, okay, then we're going to do this and this and that. And they're like, no, like we need to work on cutting, like, holding the scissors. Basics. So that was really interesting too about going to EC is like realizing how much you had to like strip things back.
Yeah.
And it really helped me get back to like my roots and like consider questions like, well, how do I hold my brush? And like, what if I picked up 2 brushes and like banged them together? Like what would happen then? And you know what I mean? Because I saw my kids like doing this and I was like, I hadn't seen anyone explore in that way for so long.
Right.
By like you said, like stripping things back and like, okay, let's just start step 1. And like, and you can't get 20 steps in, in a class. It's like, no, we're going to get through the first 1 or 2. Yeah. That was a huge learning curve for me too. So I can totally relate to your experience.
Yeah. Like keep it very, very simple. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any tips that you would give an artist who's kind of getting into teaching?
Well, I would say, and you know, you kind of touched on this earlier. One thing I really wish I would have like had in school was like taking some more art education courses.
Yeah.
Or kind of like what you said too, like just about knowing, okay, like what's developmentally appropriate.
Right.
Like how does kindergarten differ from first grade? Or like as you get further up, like, okay, how do I put together a rubric and like, how do I communicate to parents? Like, I mean, I am so grateful I went for my MFA and I learned so much. And like, I feel like being active in my studio helps me so much in my teaching.
Yeah.
But there is a part of me, like when I was first starting out, where I was like, okay, like I wish I would have had a few more of, you know, these kinds of classes, or I would have like shadowed someone but you know, like you said, your colleagues step in and like, I feel like I've learned so much on the job and through the professional development that a school provides. So I mean, it's a little rough and rocky starting out, but I think if I were to advise like an artist who's wanting to get into that, I would say, you know, maybe just go get your state license or just take a few courses online. I know like Art of Education is a really great resource online.
Yeah.
And they have tons of fun courses and professional development, and it's pretty affordable too. I think even just doing a few things like that before you get into the classroom will give you like a lot more confidence.
Yeah.
Moving forward and avoid frustration.
Yeah. I had been more on the like art ed admin side of things for a long time. And then I'd, taught a few classes a week, not nearly full time while doing more admin. So I'd seen like that side of it before diving into this teaching position. And I totally agree that classroom management, like classes, pedagogy, all of that stuff would have been really helpful to actually study.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah.
I know.
And I've thought about going back and getting like another master's, but I feel like it's just too much.
I have too. I was actually just talking to my family about that the other day and looking at online programs.
Yeah. And Art of Ed does look amazing.
It is. Yeah. I use it all the time with my teaching too. And they have so many great projects on there. Yeah, it's hard because you're like, when do you stop going to school?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm still paying off my first semesters. So
totally.
Like, how do I,
I'm not sure I'll ever pay that off.
I know. I hear you. Yeah. So it's something that I love so much that I just want to learn more about. So yeah, we'll see. But I have definitely considered that as well. And I just think, if you're thinking about, if there's an artist out there who's thinking about getting into teaching, I would say do it. I think not only does it provide stability, it also just really like helps you in your studio, but you also form these wonderful relationships with your colleagues and then your students, which, brings so much meaning to, what you do. And I'd say, we were talking about this earlier before the podcast started, but, I've been doing home-based learning too for the last 9 weeks because of COVID-19. And it is really interesting kind of like looking at, your job from this point of view, like through your computer, and you're like, I love seeing my students every day. That is why I'm a teacher, it's because, and so like, I love, talking about art and teaching art, but it's like those relationships that you form with your colleagues and your students, you're like, that is like why I'm in this. And I miss them so much. And I found that since I started teaching, like, I feel so much happier in just my studio practice. And like, I just feel like it gives, like just purpose to my career. And I think that's something I was searching for a long time. Yeah. So I think sometimes people might say like, oh, it's like a fallback plan. And that might be true for some, but like, I really don't see it that way because both of them just marry so well. Yeah. And I just feel like it makes for like a really rich like career. And like I said, brings so much meaning. Yeah. So my answer would be yes, definitely pursue teaching if it's something you're interested in. Yeah. Don't hesitate. Yeah. Yeah.
The kids are amazing.
I know.
And just seeing
I know. I come home at the end of the day and I just always just like have all these stories, like I just, and my husband will say, he's like, I've never even heard you don't ever seem to get overwhelmed by like working with little kids. Like I only hear you talk about like how fun and silly. And I'm like, like I'm so tired at the end of the day and drained, but like, it's never like, I'm always like, oh, then he said this and then he did this. And it was, it's just so fun.
They're so cute.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. My little, I'm at 2 schools, and one of my schools I'm on a cart, and to get to the TK, like the little 4-year-olds, I have to go through their like play yard. So I'm going through with the cart to get to their classroom and set up before they come in. And I have like little ducklings just like chasing me. Like, Miss Potts. Yeah. Art's coming.
It's coming. I did art on a cart too.
That's so adorable.
That's not easy. How's that working out for you?
Well, I mean, now it's not happening anymore, but it was tricky. I had already kind of decided that I was switching to a more choice-based teaching style this year.
That's great.
And around the same time that I was making that decision, I also found out I used to have a classroom there, but they're doing construction. So I moved to being on a cart. So figuring out how to create like centers on a cart has been a challenge.
My gosh, yes.
But I'm organized and made it work.
Well, that's great. And that's not an easy thing to do. I did that my first year. Oh. And I also do a lot of choice-based, and I love centers. Yeah. So pushing it in there, setting up, having 15 minutes of art, cleaning up and getting the next class.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about having your own space, because especially if you're working with younger children and you're more process based or doing those choice centers, like that really does kind of it definitely affects how you teach.
Yeah.
So,
and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how you've sort of shifted to this online teaching.
Sure.
I know for me, it's been a big challenge just because I had shifted towards choice, which for me meant what I was offering was a space and materials and then like guidance around doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I don't have the space or the materials to offer, I'm like, okay, so back to project-based. Here's some ideas using basically no materials because you might not have anything. Mm-hmm. It's been a challenge. So anyway, how have you been sort of handling that?
I think everything you just said, I'm like, oh my gosh, you understand me. That's been my life for the last 9 weeks. I mean, it was really interesting because we found out we were doing home-based learning when everyone was on Chinese New Year break, and everything kind of broke out, and then we ended up coming back home. And so, we were jet lagged, having just landed at my parents' house, and then we're starting home-based learning. So, I mean, it wasn't easy, but I tried to stick to the kind of projects I would, that choice-based learning that I would have going on in my classroom, but trying to thinking about what their environment was. And that was really hard because a lot of my students had been on Chinese New Year break, and some of them, they were in countries all over the world, not being able to get back. And so, you had some kids who were at a resort in Bali, and others who were home in Ohio, and some who were in Shanghai, and, their families going through this crisis. And so being really sensitive to the fact that parents were home and kids were home, and everyone had a lot to do, and there was a lot of stress. So I try to keep things pretty light. But also things that my students could be independent with. That was important to me because I knew again, parents are dealing with a lot. So, and then also trying to stick to, okay, you can do this with a pencil, maybe some scissors, some kind of paper that you have around the house. But I only try to keep maybe things that mom would have in her purse,
Right.
Because you don't know, some of them were just, had just left for a beach vacation. They didn't pack art supplies.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So one app that we use is Seesaw, which a lot of schools use all around the world.
Yeah.
And one really great feature of that app is they have a drawing application on it. So kids can draw directly on the screen.
Oh, cool.
And they can also record their drawing as it's happening. So then when they play it back for you, it looks like a little animation.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they can record over it. So one of the most successful projects I'd say that I did was a daily drawing challenge where I'd give them a prompt. And then they could choose to opt in and out whenever they wanted. It was all by choice. If they didn't have to do it, but it was an activity. And students seemed to really love that because you didn't have to worry about the art materials. They loved sharing with me what they were doing. And then, a great feature of Seesaw too is that they can leave a little message for you, and then I can leave a message back. So they could hear my voice and me responding to their work and asking questions.
That's nice.
And then what we're doing at the end is I think so far I have almost close to 600 drawings, and we're only halfway through, and they're all digital. So I can print them out on Canvas when we get back. And so we're going to make a big mural out of all the drawings that we did together as a division, which I think is really nice sentiment too about how, we're all into this we're all in this together.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I try to give prompts like invent a new toy, but also like, what can you see from your window? Like maybe more reflective.
Right.
Based on their experience, because a lot of them were just looking out their windows and not able to go outside.
Right.
And so talking about that and what they see. So that I would say was probably the most successful, and that one's still going on. I also had kids create their own art museum.
Nice.
And so they hang up the work on their walls, and then we talk about how they could take their family on a tour and what a tour guide does. And then they can make tickets and like charge for their museum and like make a museum sign. And we talked about how to title your work and what it's made out of. And that was fun too, because my students would make little videos of them walking around their house and pointing out their work. And it was something that they could do independently.
Yeah.
Again. And we did like found object sculpture where we talked about 3D and 2D, and they could make a sculpture garden in their house with their toys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just different things like that that don't require a lot of materials. And like, I know the drawing challenge was a little bit more product based, but at the same time, it was just kind of like a fun, easy, like opt-in assignment where they could do it if they wanted. They didn't have to do it every day. And they just really loved talking about their artwork. And it was a way for me to connect with them too, which I think is really important during this time.
Yeah.
Is to make sure to connect as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let them know like you're still there. You're okay. You care about them. They're safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we can still have fun together and make art together, even though we're 7,000 miles apart. So, yeah.
Yeah. Or even just a few miles.
Or a few miles. Yeah. You might be just down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. We were, side note, but I was trying to plan a play date online with our neighbor. We were like, how do we do this?
Yeah. I just had a Zoom birthday party this morning for my 3-year-old godson. And that was really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah. So it's like, okay, this is so unique.
Yeah.
Like I guess this is hard. But there are some things that come out of it where you're like, wow, like I would never connected with my family that way, or I would have had a Zoom birthday party with my godson, Yeah. Or I wouldn't have talked to this maybe student as much. Like we have this great dialogue going on Seesaw where I'm learning about their day, and, so there are some really beautiful things that can come out of it in terms of your teaching and connecting with your students.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of that will last beyond all of this.
Yeah. It's hard to say. Like, I don't know. I think nothing's really ever happened like this before.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hear kids talking about it. They've been watching CNN all day, I'll have kids saying like, I can't go outside because the coronavirus and I don't want to get sick. We just need to go outside and exercise for a little bit and then go. So, I mean, they're like totally processing what's going on. And like, I think that'll stick with them, but also the fact that like they're having these conversations with their teachers and like, connecting with their aunts and uncles over Zoom. And, it's kind of like the centerpiece of their day is like these like phone calls and like these Zoom calls. And I think, that really wasn't probably as present before. So I hope some of it sticks. I think people just feel, I know I feel this way personally, just like so grateful for like the mundane now.
Yeah.
like going to school and like being stuck in traffic.
Right.
And I think like, a lot of students sometimes aren't excited to come to school, but I hear my students say all the time, I just can't wait to come back. Like, I just can't wait to be in the classroom, or they'll draw me pictures of their classroom and, talk about the rainbow rug and how much they miss it. And so I think it's really developing in them this like sense of like, I am so grateful for all these things and I can't wait to get back to them.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. What the future holds.
Oh, I know.
shifting gears a little bit, I would love to talk more about your artwork.
Sure.
Because you're making some gorgeous things.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So I like to ask, and I feel like this is a hard one for visual people, but
sure.
Trying to like describe your work for someone who hasn't seen it yet.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what it's made out of first.
Yeah.
I'm a mixed media artist, so like I merge several different processes. Like I love digital photography and collage and painting, mostly with acrylics and printmaking. And so my process kind of goes from like an analog to digital to analog. So like I'll start off making a little painting in my sketchbook, and then I'll scan it and then like put into my like Photoshop and layer different photographs on top of it and manipulate in different ways. And then I'll print it off on canvas and then go back in and paint into it or add collage on top of it. So I really like that layered process.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, as far as like what it looks like, I use a lot of imagery from places that I'm a part of or I've visited. So like right now, you know, I live in China, so you'll see a lot of imagery that references that in Southeast Asia. And then there's a lot of like abstract mark making. They're pretty colorful, and I love circles.
Yes.
If you go on my
I would have guessed that.
you'll see lots of circles. I mean, I think a lot of that probably has to do being or living in China for the four years off and on that I have. Like that's a really prominent like motif and symbol. And so I've, you know, integrated that into my work. And yeah, I just love reusing different matrices. How do you matrix?
Matrices?
Matrices. I should know how to say the plural of that, but anyway. And like I love iteration, so you'll see a lot of like repeating imagery. I think that's the printmaker in me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what it looks like, and that's what it's made out of. As far as like what it's about, it's really about like the layered experience of moving from point A to point B, and that could be like a physical journey. So like could be as simple as a walk or a move across the ocean, or it could be something more spiritual. You know, it could be something like a shift in your life, moving to a new relationship or like a new phase. And so a lot of my work is generated around that main idea. Yeah. And it's kind of ever since grad school, really, it's fallen under that kind of umbrella.
Yeah. Travel and moving.
Yes.
And also thinking about home, right? And that, I feel like that has taken on new meaning now.
Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah, I often talk about like how like moving affects the way we view our homes, or traveling affects that. But now that, you know, in our state, we call it safer at home, not shelter in place. Right. Now that we're safer at home. Yeah, I've been thinking about that in a whole new way. Yeah. And like how this like has rooted me. And I think the fact that I'm at my parents' house too, like my childhood home, I'm kind of seeing that in a different way. So I won't be surprised if my work shifts again during this period. I'm sure for most artists it will. Yeah. Because it's such a huge, huge shift. And I can see us all kind of maybe thinking about that topic a little bit more. Like, what does home mean to us? And yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I think it's, you know, I talk about in my work too, how moving can be a disorientating experience. Yeah. But it also like gives us direction at the same time. And so
yeah, it's a strange dichotomy.
Yeah, it's a strange a strange paradox of like, you know, I think that's very universal. Like you go through change and you're like, gosh, that was so hard, but you do feel like it pushes you in a new direction, and like you're grateful for it in hindsight. So it kind of relates back to what we were talking about before, like, you know, how there are some really beautiful things that are coming out of this experience, and how will that get integrated into our lives down the road once things maybe return more to normal. And I think artists will really be responsible for like articulating that for people. So I think we have a really important job during this time. I mean, I think that I can just see so much of our work collectively kind of moving in that direction in the coming months.
Yeah. And I've heard artists also talking about the need to sort of document the experience, and that each person is telling their own story and their own personal experience. And then that's like collectively creating this web of what's happening.
Yeah. And that's so true, because it's like everyone's experiencing this in a different way, and each person has their own set of challenges with it. Yeah. So I'm really grateful for like social media and Instagram and things like this at this time. Maybe it's things that in the past, like I would avoid a little bit because I'm like, oh, it's taking up too much of my time, and now I'm like turning to that so much. And it is really encouraging to see like what artists are doing at home. Like I've seen the hashtag on Instagram, like hashtag artists at home, and just seeing like how they're processing, and, you know, they're really open about it too, which is, I think, really important at this time to hear what people are going through.
Yeah. And just to share that experience. Yeah. And we mentioned earlier how you've sort of managed continuing your art practice and including like showing and trying to sell your work, and how that shifts now. Because you had a solo show in a gallery in China not too long ago, right?
Yeah, back in November. Yeah.
And just sort of how all of the galleries are obviously not open for people to come look. And I know there's a lot of online things going on, but how are you sort of handling that?
Yeah. So I know it's really interesting because like you can't really make plans, you know? So I think as an artist and as a teacher, I'm sure you can relate. You're always thinking 6 months down the road or even a year. And you're like, kind of like, well, should I apply to that? Should I be? Right. And a lot of people's shows are getting canceled. Yeah. I actually had another one planned for this summer, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So I think, you know, this is a time, like for me personally, what I'm doing is just really updating all of my systems. So one thing I really love is Artwork Archive. I don't know if you
I know it, but I don't use it yet.
Yeah, and it's just a really wonderful platform. And they also have a public profile on there. So it's a great way to inventory your work privately, and it generates reports and things like that. So it's really great when you're working with galleries or planning out a show, but then they also have a public profile option. And I know I've heard from different people in the industry that a lot of galleries or like art advisors will go on Archive and look at that public profile. Okay. So I think like that's a really good resource, and to get that up and running. And we have so much time on our hands now. I've been working on that more. Also, there's a lot of databases out there that you can submit to for like art advisors who work with maybe more corporate entities or like hospitals. Yeah. There's even one called Art and Embassies. Have you heard of that one?
No, to look that up.
But it's working with all the embassies around the world, and they have some great educational programming too, and residency opportunities. But it's a free submission process, so you can like submit all your work and start a gallery on there.
That is the right price.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Yes, it's free. Yeah. So I really I'm getting that one up and running, and they have an amazing history. I mean, they've been around for quite a while. I think it's like since the 50s or even before.
Wow.
Yeah. And then let me just get my list up here. I have a list.
Or if you want to send it to me too, I can like put it in our show note.
Oh, sure. Oh, that's a great idea.
Share it with everybody.
Yes. But there's other ones like 9.arts. I don't know if you've heard of them, or Eaton Fine Art or Fresh Paint Art.com. A lot of those places have these like open kind of like you can submit your work. And again, it's like they're art advisors. So they're not galleries. It's not like getting represented, but you know, maybe they want to buy, you know, a collection of paintings for a new hotel that's going up in Singapore or something like that. So I think that's like a really great way to use this time and get those systems in place, because it does take a lot of time. And it's honestly sometimes something I can't get to as a teacher and an artist. Like, you know, you just kind of have that backlog of projects that you can only kind of chip away at. And so it is really gratifying to like get all those boxes checked off during this time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've been a little jealous of friends without kids, because I'm like, I don't have any time now.
You're like, actually, when I said that, I was like, that's really insensitive, because
no. That
is not everyone's.
It is great advice, though, for if you do have, like, you find yourself with extra time right now. It's great to like keep busy, do this stuff that can be really helpful in the future.
Yes, exactly. Or even just like, I think, when I teach, I don't have a lot of time, maybe I get up early and I do like an hour in the morning, but it's amazing how much like that hour adds up over time.
Yeah.
And I know like talking to some of my colleagues and some of my friends, like they have more work now.
Yeah.
They did before, because they're like homeschooling
right.
and trying to work from home during the middle of a crisis. And like,
yeah,
I have to say, if I can like encourage anyone out there, this is like round 2 for us, because the first wave we experienced was back in January with COVID-19. And I just remember those first few weeks being so frustrating. It was just like, how do we find a routine? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, you're trying to figure out all this new technology. Once I got to like week 3 or 4, I was like, okay, like you figure out that new normal, and things really felt like, yeah, they're still not easy, but I felt like you kind of hit your stride a little bit. So I hope that's encouraging to people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, going back to your earlier question, like all those kind of databases or even like Artwork Archive, they also have a great list of like opportunities and grants that are available too. So it's nice just to be able to scroll through that and see what might be out there.
Yeah.
And kind of to get ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. So I also am curious what a week looks like for you. And I know that's probably shifted a lot in the last few months.
It has.
So maybe it'd be interesting to hear what it was like before COVID-19 and then how that's kind of changed throughout your experience in China and then your experience coming back home to the US. I don't know what would feel like home, but
sure,
back to your parents in the US.
Yeah, I call them both my home. I have 2.
Yeah, multiple homes.
Yeah, multiple homes.
I feel like that too.
Well, I think a lot of people feel that way, right? They have many places they call home. Yeah, my day in China before COVID-19 was, I get up pretty early. I'm a morning person, and that's when I like to do my work. That's when I get like my best painting done. So I might get up at like, around 5. And I find that teaching early childhood, like your energy is pretty shot by the end of the day. And it's a very creative job too. And you're pouring a lot into it. So I try to do a lot of my studio stuff in the morning. And, it might only be like an hour and a half or 2 hours, but it's like the most productive time for me. And that's when I get the majority of the work done for the week. And then I shift and go to school. I teach, actually, this year I'm 80%.
Okay.
So I teach from 7:30 in the morning to about 1 o'clock. And I try to get a lot of my work done during that time so I can go home and just kind of decompress. And then, self-care is really important. I'm finding like, since you are using so much of that energy during the day, like it is important to like work out or like just take a walk or, take some time to de-stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the evening can really look like any amount of things. There might be meetings. It might be the studio. It might just be downtime at home with my husband or with friends.
Yeah.
We don't have kids. So I know like when we do have kids, that whole schedule will be blown out of the water. And like kids is something that, we want to have 1 or 2 sometime soon. So I have thought about a lot, like what that would look like.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We'll see. Talk to me in a few years about that schedule, because I don't know if it would play out that way.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of something you can't know ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One thing though, international teaching is really wonderful for a lot of reasons. And one thing that I really love about it is like your whole community is kind of like in this neighborhood around the school. So like we don't have a commute, like we ride our bikes to school.
That's nice.
Yeah, everything's kind of in that area. It's very family oriented. So I feel like because it's like that, I do get those extra hours during the day because, school's just 5 minutes down the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that would look, I know when I taught in the US, it looked a lot different.
Yeah.
I didn't have that same amount of time. So yeah. And then after COVID-19, now my day, I get up and I try to do schoolwork right away in the morning because my students will respond like when I'm sleeping because of the time difference. So when I get up, I try to I'll spend a few hours in the morning trying to connect with my students. And then towards the end of the day is when I do at 6:00 is when I do more of my prep work and put up the assignments and things like that. So it's kind of the middle of the day now is used for studio time, which my studio right now consists of a folding table in my childhood bedroom and some supplies that I brought from China. So I'll do things in the studio with quotation marks during the middle of the day. And then my teaching is kind of flanked on either end of that. So, and I try to get out for a walk. My parents live in a rural area, so it's safe to get out and because we don't see anyone to walk around. So
nice.
I'll take a long walk during the day. Yeah. So it's completely different.
Right.
And earlier on, there was just a lot to do to get everything up and running. And now that we're in week 9 of it, you kind of know what you need to do. And it's not as frustrating as it was before. A lot of the kinks have been worked out with technology and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You kind of have figured it out. And what was your studio like in your place in China? Did you have a studio in your apartment or home?
Yeah. So the school provides an apartment for us.
Nice.
And we have a couple extra bedrooms. And so I turned one of those into my studio, and that works out really nice. There are some opportunities in Shanghai to maybe have a studio downtown with different residencies, but with how long it takes to get, you could spend 2 hours getting there and 2 hours back on the metro. I'm I really like having a home studio. I just feel personally I get more done by having it at home. Now, again, when we have kids one day, I don't know if that'll be the case. So, yeah, I don't know. I've always just really enjoyed having my studio at home.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I had one in Brooklyn for a little while that was literally a block away from home, and even that short distance was too far.
Too far, yeah. I hear you.
I never go. I'm just at home.
I know. I'm the same way. I'm a homebody by nature. I just like being home. And I had studios when I lived in Milwaukee, and I did enjoy them because I got to talk and meet with more people. But I found that I didn't go as much as when I just had it in the, the extra bedroom. So yeah,
it's right there. Super accessible.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And what are your sort of goals for this year, or how have those shifted?
Yeah, I had some goals of getting another solo show. And I mentioned earlier, I had one on the books, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So, and I had goals of applying to lots of different galleries. And I was getting everything ready. I had been researching. I made this extensive list. And now, I think, applying to galleries would almost be somewhat maybe insensitive at this time because they're probably struggling just to keep their brick and mortar. I don't even know what's appropriate anymore. You know what I mean? It's there's not a playbook for this, for really. Yeah. So what we talked about earlier, just submitting to those databases and trying to move more things online. I've always been more curious about utilizing social media. I know I'm way behind on that. And it was always something I was I'll just do more of that later. I always put it on the back burner, but now I'm really investing in that. That wasn't a goal earlier. And now I'm that really needs to be a goal now. So I've been looking more into that. And also just connecting with other artists now online. It's so great talking with you. And I don't know if I would have connected with you otherwise, so this is really wonderful. And I'm getting online critiques going and just connecting with people from grad school. I've lost touch with a lot of people. So I'm it'd be so fun to have a critique. And So I'm just like reaching out.
We should do that.
Yeah, we should do that. I would love that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking like, what kind of, opportunities does this present?
Right.
It's disappointing in so many ways, but at the same time, like it does present some unique opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really want to like kind of dive into those. So yeah, my 2020 goals have completely shifted. I think one that's always like kind of stayed the same is just, keep making art, be in the studio. I wanted to keep up more of a sketchbook this year, which now I've had time to do that, I wanted to explore more. And so I'm like, so yeah, I do have time to do that. And that's really what, as artists, we can be doing, right? We can be in the studio and
keep making.
Yeah. And as far as teaching goals, we talked about this earlier, but yeah, okay. I think maybe it might be time to take a few online classes and, dig into that more. So I've thought about all those things.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And a few questions, just more kind of fun, get to know you things.
Sure.
What are you curious about right now?
Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, and I know this is kind of a lame response, but I am really curious about social media. And like, I have been researching that a lot lately, just like what I can do to like connect with more people.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's just that need to like want to connect, since we're all, we've lost those everyday interactions. So I'm just really curious with all these different technologies that we can use to connect with people and how I can explore those more. And yeah, I think that's what I've been most curious about lately, is just how I can reach out. And I also think too, just this experience, again, we talked about it earlier, but just thinking more about home and kind of processing that more and documenting more of this experience will definitely be something that shows up in my studio in the coming days.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's tied so much to the things you were kind of already expressing and thinking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything that you are not very good at?
Oh, there's so many things.
No, you're great at everything. Come on.
I'm just perfect at everything. No, I think, I'm sure you can relate to this as an educator. My mom's a teacher and there's so many teachers in my family, and they often say like the really good teachers are the ones that like doubt themselves all the time. Like, did I read them? Did I do that well enough? I think I'm really interested in diving into that more. And like I said, with like the online classes, just figuring out some of those struggles that I've maybe had in the classroom and what are the best ways to like reach out to my students, and even just investigating more like choice-based, like the Reggio model and things like that. Another thing that I haven't been always very good at as like an artist is like self-promotion. I will sit in my studio all day long and make art, but like if you ask me to put myself out there, that's always been a struggle for me. So I've been really working on that last year. Like I've been trying really hard to put myself out there more. And while it's scary, it's like, okay, this is so needed. Like I want to share my work with people. Like of course you want to have shows, and like of course I do apply to things, and like I've like sought out different opportunities, but even challenging myself more, like even if I don't get that, or if that grant is like unattainable, like it's still good to like go through the process and like apply and get rejected. It's okay. And so I just think like that's one thing I'm just trying to like really put myself out there more, because I think that's important.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I've heard it from other artists I've spoken to, that the business side, the marketing side, we just want to create. We don't want to deal with all the other stuff.
Yes. Yeah, and this year I actually started working with an art coach, and that's been really great. And like she's kind of kicked my butt in a lot of areas. Like, why aren't you doing this? You need to put that out there. And I really needed someone like that in my life. And so I'm really grateful to be working with her. Yeah. It's really helped me to get like my house in order, so to speak. Right. And it's been very eye-opening too. Like, oh gosh, I'm really not good at that. I need to work on that. And because easy to become like complacent, especially if you don't have someone checking in on you. I think in grad school, like, right, we had those critiques and like the reviews and like, oh, the mentors are coming and they're going to come in and like tear apart your work and like, so you have to be ready. So like that stress kind of like, got you going, but it is hard to do that especially after a long day of teaching.
Yeah, it is. So. I actually, with another teaching artist, we started like a little local critique group to help.
Oh, that's so cool.
And our goal really was just to like motivate ourselves to keep creating something. Because it was like, it's so easy to just come home and relax and not make anything after like a day of teaching, a day of parenting, and then like she goes to sleep and okay, I've got a couple hours here.
Yeah, and like I need to sleep.
Right.
Right? Like, yeah. And it's just so nice to have people who can like relate to you in that way, and just to like check in on you, and even like when you're having a down week or month or year where you're like, I haven't really made anything, but it's like, you're always being an artist, right? And like it is a bit of a roller coaster, and I've had years where like I remember there was one year I didn't barely make anything, and I had so much going on in my life.
Right.
So it's like giving yourself grace too, and being like
that's
okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And this is part of the process. And you don't have to be like a machine making stuff all the time.
Right.
Like, and realizing too that like as an artist, you're pouring that creativity into other things too, parenting and teaching. And like, that's an art form in its own way. And that you will make work about that because you are doing that. You can't separate the two.
Yeah. It's all connected.
Yeah. It's all connected. Yeah.
So we talked about things you're not good at. What is the best compliment that you've ever received?
Oh, well.
Things you are good. Now you have to like talk about how great you are.
I just said I'm not good at
this. I know. I'm forcing you.
No, I love it. One thing that happened to me, this was like a year or two ago. I was home for Christmas and I had to send a package through UPS. And while I was waiting at the counter, the person who was waiting on me saw my name. And they were like, "Are you Stephanie Barenz?" And I was like, "Wait, how do you?" And she knew my work because she had included some of my work in her thesis paper.
Wow.
And I was like, I like my jaw dropped to the floor. I'm like, that is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she told me that like she had seen my work in Milwaukee and like she had, it had been a part of her paper and her senior show. And I was like, I almost cried. I was like, that is the sweetest thing I've ever heard. So I'd have to say that was probably one of the, like, it was just an unexpected compliment,
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. Did you get contact info? Did you stay in touch with her?
Well, she gave me her website and I was able to read some of it. She had some of it on there.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, it was really cool. I was very flattered.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
One more fun little question. What's your go-to order at your favorite restaurant?
Well, in China, I mean, I love Chinese food. And in Shanghai, they have really good dumplings. Just really amazing the way they prepare their vegetables. There's like just hundreds of different ways. So I have to say, and I'm so missing Chinese food right now because we've been home for
like real Chinese food.
Yeah, real Chinese food. Like I love like their egg, the way they make their eggplant and the different kinds of tofu they have and things like that. So I'm really missing that. I've been craving it like crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'd say any kind of like I love Vietnamese food, like Thai food. Yeah, I'm a big fan of all of that. So yeah.
Nice.
Definitely my go-to order.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you would like to thank or give like a shout out to?
Well, I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for taking the time.
Like when you reached out, it really got me thinking about our graduating class and like how we like challenged each other during that time. And it was such a like formative time for me. And I was like, that I really, if I could like thank like our mentors and the people in our class from that time.
Yeah.
Because I think I really found the direction I wanted to go in during that time. And it was because like people kind of asked the right questions and pushed me in ways that I wasn't pushing myself before. So I would like to thank our graduating class.
Yes. So many amazing artists.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I've lost touch with people, but I kind of am like keeping up with them a little bit and seeing so many cool things coming out of our class.
I know. It's really amazing to see. Like I was on Instagram the other day and I saw, do you remember Aaron? He was doing this beautiful watercolor.
Yeah.
And actually, Lawrence lives in Taiwan, and I actually was able to buy one of his pieces of woodcut he was making.
Awesome.
And I have it up in my house in Shanghai. So it's cool because social media has allowed me to like kind of keep track of what people are doing and be able to comment on their work and things like that.
Yeah, so, that magic connector.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And sort of last question, where can our listeners connect with you online?
So I have a website. It's stephaniebarenz.com. And on there, I have like a link to LinkedIn and Instagram, but also a contact form in my email. So they can contact me through there if they are interested or have any questions.
Awesome.
My last name is Barenz.
Awesome. And then your Instagram is just Stephanie Barenz.
Yeah, it's just Stephanie Barenz. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you so much. This is so fun. I just love talking with you, and thanks for asking such like great questions, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I have a ton of notes now that I have to go, and I feel like I just got a lot of wisdom from you. So thank you. Totally selfish for me.
I'm glad I could help.
Yes. And hopefully it was very helpful to our listeners.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stephanie's process is so interesting to me. She puts her work through an incredible push and pull between digital and physical processes involving layering painting, prints, photos, and collage. I also love how that push and pull is echoed in the content of her work as she thinks about moving from point A to point B, whether physically or emotionally or metaphorically. I know I will also be getting organized to follow Stephanie's lead in applying to the directories and art advisors she mentioned, and I'll share the links to these in the show notes and blog posts, so check those out. I also love her drawing prompts project with her students, using Seesaw's built-in drawing option with the intention of printing the drawings for a collaborative mural later on. What a great way to use that technology. Thank you so much for taking the time, Stephanie. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, and definitely check out all of the links that she has shared with us. So I am continuing to work on trying to get episodes out every week on Sundays. Initially, I intended to make this bi-weekly, thinking I am never going to have time to do this every week. But somehow I've been managing so far, and I will try to keep it up. Next week, I'll share a conversation I had with Deborah Riley here in LA back in February. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can reach me at Teaching Artist Podcast on Instagram or teachingartistpodcast@gmail.com. Who do you want to hear from? Please share your recommendations of teaching artists. And if you loved this episode, please subscribe, leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow me. It really makes a big difference. Thank you.